The Big Al Podcast with your host, Al Bishop, unfiltered and uncut.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the show. It's just me today, no guests, I'm afraid. Basically just wanted to have a look at the madness that was EFC71 this past weekend. Obviously the biggest news coming out of that was the main event, Dalcha Luyingumbula versus Andrew van Zyl. We saw a clinical performance from Dalcha to become the third two-division champion, the EFC. Against all odds, I think everybody, including myself, I'll say that quite honestly, had counted him out against a guy like Andrew van Zyl, and just an insanely clinical performance, man, and really impressive. Champion Dalcha definitely won me over. He just had a massive game plan. He looked in great condition. He's obviously an evolving fighter who's looking really good at the moment, and who knows what the future holds for him now, man. It's a very interesting situation for Dalcha, his team, and the EFC. A guy that could possibly move all the way back down to middleweight, and that's personally where I'd like to see him compete. I saw yesterday a post from Dricus du Plessis saying that a fourth belt sounds very good to him. So who knows, maybe the future for Dricus du Plessis would be a middleweight belt. I think it would actually be a light heavyweight bout against champion Dalcha for the light heavyweight belt. Who knows? We wait and see. Obviously in the show we're going to get into a couple of questions that we got. A lot of them has to do with multiple division champions, vacating of belts, interim belts, what the plan is going forward, and what's next for the EFC with regards to all the divisions that are being held up by the multiple champs. One thing I just wanted to touch on in the Andrew van Zyl versus champion Dalcha fight was one of the judges, Judge Fogg, had given the fight to Andrew van Zyl, which raised quite a few eyebrows. Anybody who watched that fight, I think realistically would struggle to give Andrew van Zyl a win. Yes, there were some tight rounds. I think if anything, Andrew van Zyl maybe squeezed one round with 4-1, possibly an argument for winning 2 rounds, but definitely it was a definite clear-cut win for champion in my eyes. He landed a pile of significant strikes. He had good takedowns. His top control was really good. He just looked massively impressive. Another thing that stood out for me in that fight was the strength. It seemed champion Dalcha could match Andrew van Zyl almost to the T with strength, and perhaps at times was even a little bit stronger. We saw in the later rounds both guys got quite visibly tired, fatigued. I mean, it's two massive guys, and it was really a lot of back and forth. I think the biggest story of that fight was the overhands from champion Dalcha and the top game and the judo throws, we can say as well. Champion Dalcha seemed to land endless amounts of overhands, both from the orthodox and the southpaw stance. I think those shots realistically would have put out most heavyweights and probably every light heavyweight on the EFC roster. So hats off to Andrew van Zyl for taking those shots with some ease. We know what a granite chin he has. I'm not too sure how many other people would have been able to withstand those punches. One thing I would have liked to have seen more from Andrew van Zyl was, perhaps in the earlier rounds to really try and force the clinch. Make champion Dalcha carry his weight a little bit more. We spoke about it was spoken about in massive amounts, the 20 kilo plus advantage that Andrew van Zyl would have had over champion Dalcha. We saw in the first round Andrew van Zyl really trying to get to the clinch, but struggled and ended up being the victim of a judo throw where champion Dalcha took top position and didn't really do much with the top position, but he managed to maintain it and managed to keep Andrew van Zyl on his back, which was very interesting to see, especially so early on in the fight. Again, just a massively impressive performance from champion Dalcha. He won me over. He's definitely picked up a new fan in me, and I tip my hat to that guy, man, and I'm so excited for what the future holds for him. Perhaps the next mega fight would be champion Dolce versus Dricus du Plessis. I know nobody's going to complain about that one. Just to flick through all the other notes of drama, if we can call it like that, through EFC71. There was obviously a strange call, like I just spoke about. Andrew van Zyl was champion Dolce. One of the judges actually scored Andrew van Zyl winning that fight. Yes, man. It's, at the end of the day, judges will make mistakes, and you can understand tight calls. How a judge scored Andrew van Zyl winning that fight, I really don't know. It's very confusing to me, and I think it's very confusing to most guys. Obviously there's been quite a bit of chatter online with guys like Chris Bright about the judges' decisions and how crazy they are. And some of the guys come out and said, look, there's a review process. We'll go back and assess and see where we've made mistakes. Look, and I think it's important to note, MMA SA is a young organization. They're growing, developing. Bad calls do happen. They are not something that's unique to South Africa or MMA in South Africa. It's something that happens all over the world. Even the big organizations like the UFC, Las Vegas or Nevada State Athletic Commission, rather make these mistakes. The judges make these mistakes. They do happen. Whether that was a mistake or not, who can tell? Judges see things differently. That's why there's 3 judges. Another decision that came into contention, which Chris Bright brought up online, was Lutando Biko versus Stephen Gonzalez. Chris Bright was quite upset that a judge had called Stephen Gonzalez actually won that fight. And this was quite an interesting one for me. I went back and really had a look at this fight, because the feeling at cage side was that it was quite a tight contest. I do feel that Lutando Biko had probably done enough to edge a win. I figured the split decision was going to happen. I think a split decision was possibly the right call. Funny enough, I think it was the same judge who scored Andrew van Zyl winning that fight, scored that fight 3-0 for Lutando Biko, while the other 2 judges had given it 2-1 vice versa. So basically, one judge scored Stephen Gonzalez winning 2-1, and the other judge scoring Lutando Biko winning 2-1. So the way we looked at that was round 1 going to Lutando Biko, no question of a doubt. Round 2 probably going to Stephen Gonzalez. In that round, he was very active off his back, setting up. The majority of the round was Lutando Biko being stuck pretty much in a triangle attempt. Obviously, the triangle didn't happen, but Stephen Gonzalez was busy off his back. He was landing strikes. He was setting up submissions. So definitely could say that he won that round. Look, I suppose there are points to say maybe Biko edged that round. I think there was a takedown or something like that. So realistically, 2 judges both gave Lutando Biko round 1 and Stephen Gonzalez round 2. The big round in question was round 3. Now, I went back and watched this round quite a few times to kind of see, hearing the judges' motivation for how they scored that fight. Going back and watching that round. Now, round 3 was an interesting one because there was nothing really in it. Lutando Biko gets the takedown and doesn't really do too much with that takedown. Yes, he keeps a top position, but Stephen Gonzalez, if you have to do a strike count, lands massive amounts of strikes. Yes, not all of them are massively significant. There's hammer fists to the body, some elbows to the head, there's some fists to the head. He goes straight for the rubber guard, but not a defensive rubber guard. He's trying to set up a triangle, so he is active off his back and setting up submissions. So my opinion was that there was definitely some valid reasons to perhaps give Stephen Gonzalez that round. Go and give it a watch and perhaps get in touch with us. Give us your opinion. Watch the whole fight. Watch round 3 by itself and kind of see from there. There was definitely some valid points to give Stephen Gonzalez that fight. I don't think it was as clear cut as everybody thought it was, and I think if you go and watch it with an open mind and be as objective as possible, you might find that it was quite a tough call in the end. The other interesting decision there was Conti Shiabi versus P.T. Coxon. I mean, these guys, geez, what a fight. It was insane, man. When the main card kicked off with these 2 guys, that whole of Carnival City just erupted. Both guys had massive amounts of support in the crowd, and the crowd was really going wild, getting behind the supporters. The Mamelodi supporters for Conrad Siabi were dancing, going mad. Pity Coxon supporters on the other side of the venue were going crazy. It was one of the most insane crowds I think I've ever witnessed live at an MMA event. It was really, really, really insane. I know there were mutterings of a lot of people saying that, a fight like this shouldn't really be on the main card, but I think both of these guys stuck their hands up to say, look, we are contenders of the highest standard, and they really brought the fight as they promised they would. Obviously, there was a lot of emotion going into this fight. There was back and forth personal attacks, a lot of things being said, and these two guys just put it all aside and went for it. I would have liked to have seen a change in game plan from one of them. It was just ended up being like a almost in the pocket kind of brawl. I would have liked to have seen a change of tactic, but hey, these guys won themselves a fight of the night. They put on a massive performance. The crowd loved it. I'm sure the fans at home loved it. And obviously the decision came, Conti Siabi edging a split decision. It was one of those weird ones. Siabi's fans would have agreed. P.D. Coxon's fans would disagree. Both guys had stated claim for winning that fight. Tough decision for the judges there. I think it was one of those where I don't think you'd like to be a judge. It could have gone either way. There were big points in certain rounds where guys finished in top positions and stuff like that. I think in the second round, I think Conti Siabi finished in top position, laying on a bit of ground and pound, massive elbows. And I think those sort of small moments would have been big deciders in that fight, and it was a tough one. The other controversial decision was further down in the prelim cards, involving Jason van der Merwe. A lot of people felt that his fight was stopped prematurely. He took a couple of shots, was rocked, dropped, and Bobby Carrier Janidi stopped the fight immediately. One of those weird situations, I think Bobby got it right. I know Jason would disagree, and his camp would disagree, and his fans would disagree with me. But realistically, the way he looked, the way his body was moving, the way his head was facing, for me, it was the right stoppage. He wasn't in it. He seemed very disorientated, and he was definitely probably going to take an amount of punishment that he didn't need to. And I think in terms of longevity for your career, you'll be thankful for not taking that punishment that probably would have happened. Look, we don't know exactly what he was going through, but from what it looked like, I think Bobby Carrier Janidis, for me personally, got it right. He saved Jason van der Merwe a lot of punishment. I know those guys will disagree, but that's the way I see it. Obviously, it was a great night. There were some massive fights. There was the fight everybody wanted to, well, not everybody wanted to see, but everyone was intrigued to see how it would turn out. Mark Kumba versus Elvis Ngwala, who was making his debut at middleweight, who's now going to return to lightweight, which just seemed like chaos, and it went pretty much exactly the way you thought it would. The first shot landed on Elvis Ngwala, ended his night. He folded to the ground, almost curled up, and took a bit of ground and pound. There was a fight over. I don't know how that fight happened. I hope nothing like that ever happens again. There's weight classes for a reason, and guys need to stick to that. I respect Elvis's decision. He kind of said to me that, he saw an opportunity. He took the opportunity with open hands, grabbed the bull by the horns, and just went for it no matter what the situation. Dangerous game to play, in my opinion, but he got out unscathed, took a big KO for his first fight. Hopefully he takes some time off, recovers from that, and we see him back in action soon. That's really the biggest highlights of the fight. It was a great event. Good performances. We got to see some massive guys. I just wanted to give another shout out to the PE boys, Chris Bright's team. Really put on a great show. Sindile Manangela and Lutano Biko. We know PE is just a small pocket of MMA in South Africa, and those guys came into their fights with good game plans. They were in good condition, well-rounded guys, and hats off to them, man. I know they're desperately crying out for EFC and PE, and hopefully that comes to fruition sometime soon. Also want to talk about Marcel Els, who had a great fight against Rocky Lunga. Both guys, I think, really put their names down for the future. Rocky Lunga looked very raw, very talented. Reminds me a lot of his brother Laney Lunga. I think with a lot of work and experience, he's only going to get a lot better. Powerful kicks. I think Marcel Els ate a lot of powerful kicks. He shot a lot of heart to turn that around and get the win there. He was obviously very emotional after his win, and shout out to Marcelli. Well done on that win. Cool. What I wanted to get to next was we had a couple of fan questions which we asked online to give us your questions or something you wanted us to discuss. The first one was Baldwin Scrimmager on Instagram. He said, what's happening with the EFC? Are there still divisions, or are they hungry for money fights with double champs? Where does it leave the rest of the roster? This is obviously a big underlying theme at the moment. When it comes to obviously talking about money fights and so on, this is the global trend of MMA at the moment. Guys are going up weight classes, putting on big fights. You know, everybody's talking about this money fight. We consider it the Conor McGregor effect. And who can blame a promotion for jumping at those opportunities? I mean, for a guy like Champion Dolce, who has this massive following, to go up and face this monster in Andrew Funzel, why would you not let that happen? You know, it makes sense on so many levels. It's the question of the unknown. It brought a massive crowd. It got people invested into the story, and that's the way it is. Where does it leave the rest of the roster? This is something we have to get into. There's going to be a lot of talk now about vacating belts, interim titles. What happens to all these divisions? Because realistically now we have 3 double division champions holding up a whole pile of divisions, and this is something we're going to get into. So Baldwin, stay tuned, and thanks very much for your message. The next was Matthew Love, saying, we're not UFC actually going to start building contenders for their title fights instead of simply making a title based on hype. Would be great to see fighters actually earning shots within their divisions in the EFC. Similar sort of question there from Matthew. It's the same kind of thing, Matthew. Look, the global trend at the moment is to put on these super fights. Obviously it's money spinners for the promotions, and at the heart, any MMA promotion is realistically entertainment business, you know, so they want to put on the biggest and best fights possible. And lately, and sometimes that means, you know, perhaps guys not in their own weight class. We've seen it so many times. I mean, most recently, Colby Covington, who's just all of a sudden the interim champion, who's now going to fight for the welterweight belt in the UFC. And realistically, obviously the guy can fight, but he's talked his way into that position. He's hyped his way into that position, and that's just the way it goes at the moment. There hasn't, in the defense of the EFC in particular, there hasn't really been a situation where, you know, none of these fights really make sense. The great fights, you know, Dricus du Plessis going up was a massively insane great fight. It was hyped, it was really well done, it was well promoted, and people were invested, and it was done really well. The same with Champion Dolce now, and the same with the Mandolino. You know, we all want to see, can it be done? Okay, so now we're seeing, yes, it can be done. And we have to focus on the divisions that are being held up, and that'll be the next step, and that'll be very interesting to see how the EFC handles all of that. I saw Dricus du Plessis put out that he's, again, I think we mentioned earlier, he's keen for a 4th belt, so maybe we're going to see Dricus fight for a light heavyweight belt against Champion Dolce. Who knows? But these fights get people very excited, and I'm not anti them. I just hope to see a bit of a progression in the divisions that are being held up. So Matthew, I'll carry on with this topic, and also thanks very much for your question. Next one was Reece Groenewald. Do you think that since there are now 3 double champs, that EFC should introduce some interim belts so that the divisions don't get held up as much as they currently are? It is obviously not easy to just introduce an interim belt. What do you think is needed? Okay, so this is the next step of evolution now for these divisions that are being held up. We're now talking about heavyweight, light heavyweight, middleweight, welterweight, and then the ladies divisions, flyweight and bantamweight. And also, we wait to see what's going to happen with JP Bays, who's just signed with Brave. Will he vacate? Will he defend? Will he fight in both promotions? We wait to see. So the bantamweight division could be waiting in limbo as well. My opinion on the matter is, first and foremost, I think Champion Dolce realistically will vacate the heavyweight belt. I think he'll either go and focus on light heavyweight. So perhaps we will see Champion Dolce moving down to middleweight, or definitely back to light heavyweight to defend his belt there. I don't see him spending too much time at heavyweight. which would obviously leave the belt vacated and open to new guys coming in and perhaps seeing a new champion. We don't know how much longer Andrew van Zyl will still be competing. He always seems to be a bit in the lurch about if he's going to continue and how much longer he will continue for. You know, there's guys like Ruan Potts, Wessel Mostert. We're going to see Wessel Mostert versus Elvis Moyo very soon in Sun City. That could give a different indication about who might be next in line for the title. Guys like Ricky Masholos are in the conversation there. We wait to see what Champion Dolce does with that. Obviously, then middleweight is held by Dricus du Plessis. I don't know how much time Dricus will be spending at middleweight, because I'm pretty sure welterweight is where he'll focus for his career moving forward. So I see that belt being vacated. We don't know when we're going to see him in the EFC again. He's probably going to fight in KSW again sometime soon. So perhaps we'll see an interim belt being given up for the welterweight division. That's what I would do. Give up a welterweight division and force these guys to defend or vacate one of their belts. That's going to make the most sense. Definitely see Champion Dolce vacate heavyweight and either going back to fight at light heavyweight or set up an interim belt for him.